So last time we kind of finished, I think, at least from my perspective, I never know from your perspective, we kind of covered employees infinitum, right? And so we're going to now kind of move into just payroll processing, basically, is what I was going to work on today. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Okay. So payroll processing, you have the time leave journal, then you have the payroll journal. And those are the two places we're going to play with. We always do the time leave journal first. We might do multiple batches of it. Then we go ahead and post that, and it usually will post into the payroll journal. All the leave can post directly to the ledger. So you have a couple choices there. In North Carolina, for instance, they need the leave to actually be embedded in a check. It has to be connected to a check. So they have a different policy, and that's just a state requirement. In Ohio, probably, leave taken can just immediately update their bank and not have to go through a check per se. That's not the same thing as having the balance on the check. This is an issue of just recording leave taken. But yet it might be done during the payroll process. It might be done outside of the payroll process. It's kind of up to you. So that's kind of one thing that I want to sort of start off with is just the templates themselves. So in the admin side of payroll, you have this thing called time journal templates. And you should only have one typically. Now somebody's put a second one in called doc, and I'm not sure what that's for. So we can say that's okay. But the only reason you typically would have two different templates would be if you want to have different answers to some of these questions, which this doesn't have. So there's really not that much advantage in having two different templates. Templates are at the highest level, and then batches are below that. So below each one of these, there would be a set of batches. So the doc journal will have these three, I guess. I have a feeling these are going to have the same ones. Let's just see. Well, they have a few others. Yeah. Now, one thing I want to show you when you set up these batches is that if you notice here, it has a column called Payroll Journal Batch. And what that means simply is that no matter what batch I'm processing this in, it's going to go ahead and post into this Payroll Journal Batch. But one thing I will argue is that, this one is set to delay. Okay, so the delay post to ledger until payroll journal is posted means that if you do the leave taken, it's going to actually go into the payroll journal, and so that's fine. So I just want you to also see this batch type. So with these batch types, you have to really have at least one of each. So the system kind of creates the default time, default leave, and default both as kind of the default, if you will. That's why when I looked here, you saw those three choices. And the reason it's doing that is because it just wants to give you one possible default batch for each of the styles. And again, these are the three styles. I can do time only. It's just putting time in. I can do time leave. Time leave is where one line contains probably a per diem substitute pay in which the rest of the lines filled out with the teacher who was substituted for. And so typically when you're interfacing from ASOP, let's say, or places like the Subfinder, when you have those systems kind of tracking the substitutes, usually the data you're getting in the file says, here is the information that tells me which sub is working, and here's the teacher that was off, and here's why they were off. And so you can see where, kind of makes sense to bring that in sort of one contiguous long record. That's what tells us the time/leave batch is for. So typically it's not data entered into, it's usually imported into, is a typical thing. Usually if you're doing data entry off of sheets of paper, you're really kind of doing your time entry over here. And time entry, again, is hours and per diems. So it kind of means either hours or per diems, or you're doing your leave. And the leave you would be doing the leave one. So you kind of don't use time/leave in a data entry mode. Typically use that more as a place for it to land in a automated process when it's coming in from an external system. So that's just the convention. It doesn't mean it has to be that way. That's just generally how it's been. What it means here in terms of when they post, they're all posted to the same payroll journal batch. You do want everything to funnel into one batch. You want to then calculate. It brings in then the salaried people. And if there's a lot of times you can have a salaried employee who has maybe a per diem or an hourly pay as well, well, that got keystroked in or imported in from somewhere. That's also in the batch, but now will come their pay, their earned comp sal, whatever the case may be, maybe coaching pay like we described yesterday, and then the taxes, of course, and the expenses and net pay are all computed. And then you do all the other processes we're going to teach you how to do, which some of which you might have already seen, but hopefully some of it will be kind of connecting dots together for you. All right, so that's kind of the way that works. So the choices here is post to ledger as time journal is posted. So as I'm posting, post to the ledger as time journal is posting, it just simply means in relationship to leave. Okay, and that's why it's called leave post option. So in the example where you had a time leave journal, the time would go to the payroll journal and the leave would go right to the ledger. Or with the delay, it all goes to the payroll journal, it all gets part of the calculate, it all gets a check number assigned, and voila, that's how it works. So I think the key thing when you do post directly is that you have to have a document number. And so it's up to you then to put a document number in there when you're posting leave. And so I'll show you that as we get farther into this. This is the test report we're using, and we pretty much use a standard test report that K-12 wrote. You know it's a K-12 piece of work when you see 8 digits in which the first 4 start with a 3708. If you see 3708 as the first 4 of 8 digits, that means it's a K-12 piece of work. And this is the test report. So I guess the concept would be later on if we come up with an alternative time test report, and client A wants it to be the alternative version, you would just come here and change it to the other version, and voila, that company has a different version. So it kind of has the ability to support multiple formats of test reports, which at this point we've never had that as a problem. They all seem to be fine with this report, which has been enhanced a million times over the years. So payroll processing, time and leave. So when you click this button, you get a choice. And again, it's kind of connected to that type of batch that we were just looking at. And so I'll go ahead and first just work on time only. So we'll click on that. And I'm getting now a screen that's opening like this. And the only reason I'm getting this screen is because there's more than one record. So if there was not more than one record, if that template was gone, and I'll go ahead, since I'm in a test system, I don't really care. I can do anything I want. I'm going to go to the time journal template and delete this guy. All right. And so now if I go into the time journal, I still pick my style, and voila, it opens. Because why would it not? It would just, that's all it needs to do. And we happen to have a lot of data here, which I guess is a good thing, so we can practice with this data. We must have caught during the backup where they were still in their time entry mode. One thing to note immediately is if I click this button right here, I can see how many lines are actually in this batch. And that's often nice to see. One thing to note, and just in general in NAV, if you're in a journal type of screen, you really only want one operator working that journal at the same time. We find if you have 2 people working at the same time, it's kind of like a madhouse. So if you say to yourself, well, I've got 2 operators that need to enter time, then set up 2 batches and tell them which batch to go into, and that would be that. And so maybe use their names, whatever. So I think it's real important to understand that you do not want 2 people in a batch at the same time data entering. That is never a good thing, never a pretty picture, and we definitely want to make sure that doesn't happen. So during the training phase, you want to make that clear that if you need, a lot of times they'll have like somebody else in the district besides the main payroll person will be brought in during this crunch time to data enter sheets of paper into a journal, and so fine, just set up a different batch. That's why we have the multiple batches funneling into the main payroll journal where the payroll operator takes over at that point. Okay, let's just work through some of these fields. We do have some fields hidden. We'll look at some of those. Some of them are important, possibly. It's interesting we have this payroll job start date because I think that's a field that actually is normally not on the screen, but it is on right now. And I'll explain that field and why that's important. So the date worked. The system is analyzing the date worked to determine whether, what cycle was it earned in. Ultimately, you're going to pay this under one check date, which is going to be basically a pay cycle of whatever one is based on that check date. But in terms of when they earned it, if you will, if you put in a very old date, the system does try to figure out when, what cycle was that earned on. There's really not a lot of algorithms based on that, but it does get filtered into this screen over here where it has earned pay cycle. So you'll see it kind of there. And so I'll explain that in a second as we get over here. But date worked. And remember with the date field in NAV, I'm just going to kind of go to the bottom of this screen now and just kind of enter a new value. I'm just going to click. I'm doing Control End and then Home. Control End brings you to the bottom right real fast. Home brings you right here, and I can go one click down. So I do a Control Home. I typically do a Control End and then Home. So I teach people that when they open these batches, these large batches back up, I like the Control End Home combination to bring me to the bottom of the spreadsheet, because I try to tell them this is just like a spreadsheet. Just think of it sort of like a spreadsheet, and you'll be good to go. The date, as you see, defaults in from the value above me. But just again in nav, just in general, this is October dates. So I think I might switch my work date back. So I'm guessing it was probably maybe the 10/22. So I'm just going to kind of trick the system and set it back to 10/22/14 just to be kind of close to that period. And that can help me just to get the behavior to be right, just to mimic what it would be like. So if I type in 14, okay, it's 10/14. If I type in 09/05, it's 9/5. Okay, so you only have to type in a minimal number of characters. If it's just a couple characters, then it interprets that as a day. If I type in 32, it'll be confused. Type in 31, and it might make more sense to it. So just keep in mind how that works. Okay, the ID, I'll just go ahead and pick the same person again. Okay, now notice Rosanna did not default in a payroll job. Okay, the reason she didn't default in a payroll job is because her default job is not an hourly or per diem job. So let's just kind of prove that to ourselves. Let's kind of go over into the navigate, go to the card, and go to jobs. And see how it's salary. So her main default job is salary, and so the system does not default in a value when it is actually salary. It expects you to come here and put it in. One of the problems that I still think we need to kind of figure out a way to do better on is if I do a lookup here, the problem is it looks up only hourly and per diem jobs and shows all of them. It doesn't show the ones that this person was actually connected to. And so that's okay. We used to have it so it was limited just to the hourly and salary non-block jobs for that employee. And that was fine, but the problem is that people over time were seeing this employee for the first time working some hours or some per diems to a job that the system hasn't seen before. And so the problem is that for you to be able to data enter it, to be able to get to a wizard to possibly create it on the fly, we couldn't really do that unless we opened up the table relationship, if you will, to all hourly and per diem jobs. So that's kind of why you see all those. If I actually type, obviously I can type miscellaneous. We know she has miscellaneous. But if I type another one, let's just pick aid and hit enter, the system will give you a message saying the employee does not have aid ready for use. Do you want to set up this job now? And if you hit a Y or pick up your mouse and say Y, what the system will do is it'll open up a screen. It will use today's date. It'll then go basically to the end of the year and kind of create it. It's using 10/15 as a date. I don't know why 10/15 exactly, but that's fine. I know my check date's going to be more advanced than 10/14, so I'm fine with that. I'm sure it's smart enough to know why it's picking 10/15. But again, remember, you have to do some things to fill out a job in our previous conversation. What's the minimum for an hourly job? Well, if I'm looking here, probably the absolute minimum is I really just need an allocation. It's probably the most minimum. And so I can go in here and maybe create a new allocation, but I'm just going to go ahead and find a random allocation of Amy Ellis because I'm too lazy. And so at this point, it's set up an allocation because I'm just using an old allocation basically. So don't do this at home, guys. This is just me playing around. Make sure you don't block it, of course. I don't care about the full-time equivalent. If you want to put a rate, it's $12 an hour, and it's going to be $12 an hour every time you click to it, then set it up. Most of the defaults will set up okay for you. If I hit OK at that point, it brings everything in. It just completely brings everything in at this point. I can type in 5, and now that job is established for Rosanna, so for the next time it'll be there. I know how I'm going to do the allocation and so forth. Now, I could have left the allocation blank, and I could have maybe created an allocation on the fly. If I come home, I do have the ability to auto-create an allocation. One feature, and I'll show you how this works, is if it was blank, let me think. Let me see. Hold on. If it does, let me just see this. Yeah. So in this case, if it doesn't exist, it's blank, it'll just bring you kind of to the screen where you enter the allocation in. But in this case, interesting enough, it sees that an allocation came in. And this is the classic sort of example, is that you have an allocation on the sub, a standard allocation, maybe a default allocation. But because of where the sub worked, you need to override it. So very often it has to be, you have to indicate the GL override, the budget code like in state software, here on this screen right now. And again, of course, we also do this if it gets imported in from like ASOP and it's got the GL on the file. We kind of do the same thing. But anyway, suffice to say, right now, what you do is, you come in here, you can say yes, and now it says, do you want to set up this new allocation with all the settings from this allocation? If I say yes to that, it opens up the screen with those settings, and I go, yes, everything's great, but that special cost center needs to change to 2601, and he'll hit OK, and I'm off and running. So that's a way to sort of change the allocation. You can see it pulled another number now, and it's replaced it, but yet it brought in the values from the other allocation that came in automatically from that employee job that you connected to. So I'm just kind of giving you some flavor on how this stuff works. We talked about overtime. How do we just do overtime in a very simple way? Well, if I just type earn, and if I do that and just sort of slow down, it should pop up a list. It's not going to pop up a list? Oh, well, I'm not sure why it doesn't. Not a normal control, so it's actually not sensing overtime has been set up for this person. I'm not sure why it's not been set up. I'm not sure if there's another. Nope, that's overtime. Yeah, not sure why it wasn't set up. It should be set up for everybody, in my opinion. Anyway, so to make it clear, though, the way earned over worked, I just overrode. I'm still coding it to this job, but I'm coding it to earned over, and it automatically changed the rate from $12 to $18, and then fixed the amount. Okay, so that's, and if I want to go back to earn regular, I'll do that. It's back to $12. Can I change this rate dynamically? Yeah, you can. System will take it, no problem. Now, if I come in here and type in earn over, give me that message again, but then it'll override it again. So just be aware of that. So you can override the rate. You can't override the earnings. The earnings is not editable. You only can mess with hours and rate, bottom line. Okay. In terms of this field here, payroll job start date, you could hide this column. This kind of column is coming in somewhat automatically. It is the absolute connection to the employee job, because remember, the three fields that make up an employee job unique record is employee number, payroll job number, and payroll job start date. So because they could have that same job year after year after year with different payroll job start dates. It's important then that the system know which job this is connected to. This becomes important. We know in Pennsylvania with a district we've been working with, not sure in Ohio, but at the end of the year, 6/30, timesheets are coming in, and it's possible that you want for maybe a 7-1 type of admin type worker, you want to reflect some of the hours to last year and some of the hours to the next year. You're kind of straddling the fence. And the problem is the system will just default based on this work date. It'll just guess which one is the right one. And it is right 98, 99% of the time. But right at the end of the year, because of lagging timesheets and other things, it may be slightly off. And so that's why this field is there, because as long as those two jobs are not blocked at that point during this quote-unquote straddle period, the operator can go ahead and tell the system explicitly which job of the same payroll job number you want to connect these hours to. And that's, again, for analytics and other reasons why you'd want to do that. So I'm not sure if Ohio is that sensitive to making sure that every hour gets absolutely connected to the right job, but I do know we do see that in other states, and so that's why I mentioned it. A lot of operators will close this field. They won't show this field on the screen because they really never interact with it. It kind of just gets automated on its own. So as I come down here and go ahead and put in the same person again, and I put 8 in again, you'll see what it does in terms of that day. It just defaults that day. It just knows what to do, basically. Okay? Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I've given this person lots of time. Anyway, so let's think about other fields as I scroll across. It's a real simple screen. The system is figuring out what pay cycle code, what earned pay cycle term, and if I click on this, you'll get a screen that shows you kind of how the system is built. So actually you can see that the way somebody set up period 7, it goes from 10-1 to 10-15. It's paid out on 10-15, which is a little unusual because that's an indication of no lag. You know, I'm paying you on the day of your last day of the pay period. So I suspect that this is just a classic semi-month process, and you know they're not really using any kind of arrears kind of tracking. They don't have in other words, they don't have the start date and end dates being real. They're not real. They're kind of almost just fake. So you just got to be aware of that. The key thing that you want to make sure is that if you want to see this as a period 7 payroll, then your date worked needs to be 10-1 to 10-15. So if I type in 9:30 as an example, let's just kind of go do it and see what it does. And don't hold me to this if it doesn't work right. But I'm going to go 09:30 and come over here. Kind of go da-da-da-da-da. Whoops, where am I at? There we go, 6. So you see how it says a 6 now? And you can actually see 7 and 6 because I'm straddling here. I'm not sure why that 10-14. Yeah, I don't know why 10-14 is, though. Let me just put this as 10-14. They're both 10-14, but you would think, let me see. Yeah, the weird part is these are all 8s as well. And 7s. I sometimes get confused in terms of what causes that. So anyway, but it doesn't really matter. I would not get hung up too much about it. We do have a program later on in the payroll journal that can compare the earned pay cycles to the paid pay cycles. Most people don't care. It's an option you can opt out of, and my recommendation would be to opt out of it. I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, so yeah, there's not much else going on this time screen. This leave payroll job number shouldn't be on this screen, so I'll have to look at that, but that's a separate issue. But okay, so let me go ahead and see if there's any columns missing. And I think what's going to confuse you a little bit is that there's going to be a lot of columns you're not seeing. So you see all these leave columns you're not seeing. So we're kind of opening and closing them on our own. So in some ways, you can't fiddle with them because they're kind of managed by the system. Let me see if you really got any fields in here interesting. There's really, I mean, there's some newer stuff being emerging right now, but it's really just nothing. I mean, generally speaking, I don't find anybody messing with these columns very much, except maybe they close that payroll job start date. And that's pretty much that. In terms of, let's just kind of go through the options here. Suggest lines. So suggest lines I don't think is used all that often any longer. Suggest lines is a way to have the system go through the employees based on a filter and pre-populate the screen. So if there was some kind of pattern, you could maybe pre-populate the screen and then just more check it, as opposed to actually data entering all the data or importing all the data. So that's what suggest lines was for. So when you suggest lines, it can go through and basically default in, do not default hours, so it can just sort of put, if you will, just a record for each person. The default hours can be put in, or it can be use the employee's default hours. There's a field just on the employee card. So if you're semi-month, and semi-month is kind of more difficult because the hours, I think, shift every semi-month. I'm not positive about that. But if that is the case, then you'd probably be better just using entered hours, and you would just enter the hours in right here. You would say, I want it to be this time, 96 hours. I'm just making that up. Or, again, you can use the default hours, and you could use the hours per day. Now, using the job hours per day would imply that you're actually doing this, one line per day. In other words, it's actually creating one line per day. You're actually doing a start date and an end date. So in other words, that example, I want to pop in a whole week, and the system is going to put 5 records for each day for each person. Again, most people don't want to put a record in per day. They actually just want to put in, the total hours for the pay period, regular and overtime. So it just depends on what your style is. There's a lot of choices here. I'm not sure a default payroll calendar is used for. So I'd have to argue use employees' default hours. Yeah, I just don't know what the default payroll calendar is used for. So I'd have to demur on that because somebody is, I think, enhanced this recently, so I'm not really sure. And again, you have a bunch of filters that you can filter for. So that would pre-populate it. This we went over already. Retrieve timesheets. So we have a feature which is a whole time entry system, which we've been working on. And once those time entry sheets are completed, then when not completed but approved, you can click this button. Hey, Bill, are you recording, by the way? Yes, you are.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, thank you. The cutoff date. So here what you would say is through this cutoff date, go ahead and create the records for the time entry automatically. Now there it will create them by day. It's pretty much how it's organized, just because that's how the time entry is recorded. It's going to record it. It's going to create it in the same way. So there you will get it by day, no matter what you do. And again, through the cutoff. So if the timesheet is crossing a week in which part of that time you want to be in next cycle and part in this cycle, you can go right to that day, and it will go right to that timesheet and just pull the number of days through that time slot. And then you can just, of course, go to the next payroll. When you do it again, you advance it, and it's smart enough just to pull just the few days that were left from that last timesheet, then maybe begin to pick up the next timesheet. So that's pretty much hopefully well oiled and well organized, and the data will just drop in. So that's something that you could also do. Reset rates, I don't know. These guys here, and again, calculate overtime rates. I've asked development to do some additional training for all of us because I'm not really sure. This guy here, process only imported lines. So I'm just not sure. They're starting to develop additional functionalities, and again, I'm just not sure. I can't train you on them because I don't know them myself, so I'm not going to bother, but it is something that we should think about. Now, to create multiple days, I do know what that does. When you create multiple days, you can say days to add, and I can say 3 and hit OK. And what it did is it just added 3 more days for the exact same thing. So again, it's a good feature once you have a timesheet and let's say you want to enter things by day, which maybe is not that important for time entry. This same functionality works on the leave side. Here it is important because maybe you have something in front of you that says, well, they took 3 days off in a row. Well, okay, I can just put 1 in and just hit it and say, just to go copy that 2 more days. So that's kind of nice. And it will skip weekends and holidays all automatically. So it does know work days, and we'll obviously understand that. And today I heard on a call today where I heard for the first time that a district was working on Saturdays. So, I know, exactly. It's like, what? But I guess they had a lot of snow, and so they made them work on a Saturday. It's like, oh, my God. That's interesting. So delete all lines. If I click that button, all these lines will just disappear. It deletes the entire batch. So if the entire batch, you imported the whole thing in, you went, oh, my God, just hit that button, it'll all go away. The show edit is kind of connected back to the create auto allocation. You just click it, and it'll show you the allocation. And again, my screen is always so wide. It makes no sense. Time test report. So that is that test report that's from that template based on that 3708 object. So again, if I click on that just to confirm to you, I will show you. There's that same object ID. So again, if for some reason, you expect it to be some specialized time test report, you can come here and see what object it is. Print employee totals, yeah, why not? Sort it by employee name typically, sometimes location and employee name. Test for exceeding contract limit. So, hey, I think they're going to exceed their contract limit. Print allocation detail, which I wouldn't want. but maybe that's important. We'll run it with or without. Print payroll job summary, payroll control summary, why not? And hit OK. All right, so we'll just take a look, see what it does. Hopefully, Bill, we won't get a work order out of this. Bill,
yeah, really.
We're like work order central here. It's like, holy crap. All right, so it comes up in the print layout mode, I see. Let me go ahead and 150 it. All right, so we got Patricia. So I guess she's a B, right? So it's the first B. I got a total for that employee. I've got hours in there. I've got total hours. I've got different rates, which, quite honestly, seems a lot to me. But let me just go back here. Yeah, this doesn't look right, does it? I mean, again, I don't know who's playing with this data, but that's a sub.
It is test data.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Because the reason I'm questioning is that I'm using the same job, I'm using the same payroll control, different days, and notice the hourly rates. So my accounting instincts tell me that something's not kosher. I can look at data immediately and tell you something's wrong. This may be reasonable. What do I know? Who am I to say? But you see more of it going on here. So, you know what I mean? I just don't know. It's like almost somebody's telling me that they're working hourly job and they're working a sub job and they haven't set the jobs up correctly and they're fiddling with the per diem and just overriding it with an hourly rate. That's what that smells like, which really is not good. I would never do that. That's, again, getting back to sort of mixing and matching, because now when you do analytics on that quantity down the line, it'll make no sense to anybody. So that's kind of stuff, Brent, if you start seeing that stuff, you got to say, time out. What are we doing?
Okay.
That doesn't make any sense. That just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so let's go to the end of the report now and see what we got. The end of the report, and again, we're adding apples and oranges, as we just saw. So some of those subs, I don't trust these numbers now. Because they're quote-unquote hours. They use the word hours, but they kind of are units when they're per diems. So probably should say hours/units, but I think that's fine. And there it is by payroll control. So overtime, there's my little overtime I did, and hourly pay and whatever. So that's that. If I do the allocation, let's just do that now. So again, one of the things that I would argue is, again, I told you we get a work order out of this, Bill. And remember I said on our dev call last time that we're getting a lot of this action. So you're missing, I believe, part of that string, Brenda, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, missing the job code, I think, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, Bill, you want to do this one? You want the object ID?
Yep.
All right, so it looks like, again, we have when it's run in the mode of the allocation being shown, report ID, drum roll please, 3708-5503 needs the account string stretched probably about another 25%. That's what I would say, just from an argument. I would say it's about a 25% stretch. You never know. Poor developers have no idea. It's like, well, how big do I make it? You know what I mean? Who in the heck's going to have that many digits? Well, you guys do, obviously. All right, so that's a test report. Other actions, update lines with hours is another thing that we have. So what this does is it goes through and updates the existing lines. So this is kind of a weird thing, but it just kind of updates the lines that are already there as opposed to creating the lines. I'm not sure why that's there. Delete 0 lines, so that would delete any line at 0. So I guess it just did it. I don't know if it really did. Doesn't seem to be doing anything. I don't know what those do. We talked about that. Yeah, so pretty much that's it. So when you're done, you post. But before we do that, I'm going to go to my payroll journal and just make sure it's empty, because I don't know if it really is. Yeah, it looks empty. Okay, good. All right, so we'll go to the time journal now. We'll go ahead and post this bad boy. And let it do its thing. And again, we have the delay on. So now, again, there's no leave taken in the time batch only, because this is time only. So by definition, this is not a relevant option. It's only a relevant option in the next two options. Okay. It'll empty out. It's done. We close, and we say, oh, good. Now I'm going to come back to the time leave journal and go to the leave only journal. Oh, look at that. Got a lot of good stuff here going on. Let's look at our batches again. So I have the line count not giving me information. Bill,
Man,
what the hell? My time journal batch is not showing my line count in the leave only. So in the leave only, and my guess is the time/leave, our line counts don't seem to be working. It's a flow field. I believe the flow field is not right. What is my wife texting me? Oh, she's always texting me stuff. Oh, making a mess. She's making a mess. That's good. She's allowed to make a mess. So anyways, the line count seems to be giving us erroneous data when it's in time journal batches where the batches are not time only, because it worked in time only clearly. Let me actually go to the other one, to the mixture, and see if this one doesn't have any data in it at all. So that's fine. Let me just put some data in it real quick.
So it's when it's not in time
only, I believe. Let me just kind of go out of here now and go back to this. I want to prove it's not working here as well. Well, look at that. So it's really just the leave only one. Let's just go back to that one more time. Watch it work right now. No. Yeah, it seems to be time journal batch line count does not seem to give us correct result when it's in leave only. It's the leave only mode. I could probably flip over to another screen and find out in 2 minutes, but I'm not going to bother. But we need to fix that. Because the purpose of this, Brenda, is to be able to look at that and say, I've got data in this batch, right? Okay. Because you could have 10 batches here. Where's my data living? You know, and it's nice for you to know, because if you're, let's say, you're a supervisor and you want to come back behind people and look at what they're doing. Somebody says, check that batch. I don't remember which batch I was in. Well, you can tell quickly because there's data in it.
Okay.
That's how we know it's support. We always know where your data is because we rely on this line count, which obviously I'm not relying on right now. So anyway, so we'll go into this batch. So here it's a little bit different. Date worked, leave, employee number. So we have a little bit of a different terminology now. Leave employee name. We have leave document number. Leave document number, as I told you before, is only relevant to be filled in when it's going to be directly posted to the ledger. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a way to default it, but I do believe it will repeat, meaning that if I, let's say, go to this last line, do Control End and Home, practice what I preach, and I come over here and I put a 1, 2, 3 here, as I go down, you see it'll start following you. So okay. You might say leave April 2015, you know what I mean? And then just as you go down, it just goes down. You only need to care about this when you're not posting it, when you're posting directly to the ledger with that setting we saw in Time Journal template. But if you're doing the delay, it gets embedded within a check and therefore gets a check number and therefore is not relevant, you see. Document number is not important, but you can't post to the ledger without a document number. That's always required because the navigate function doesn't function unless it's got a document number, you know. And so then later on in life, when I finally get to that posted entry, I can hit the navigate button and it will bring it all together, everything that was in that batch. If you assigned everything the same document number for that whole batch, which is nice to do. I mean, that's a good thing. So that's kind of its purpose. So if you're a type of user where you know you're always doing the delay, then get rid of that column. It doesn't have any purpose because it'll never be used. The cause of absence code and leave control code. So we put this field here before this field on purpose because when you put in the cause of absence, based on setup, and again the setup has to be correct, it will pull in the leave payroll control code. And so I guess when I go to PR and go to advanced, PR means professional, and you see the leave control. So as long as this column's filled in, which it needs to be, we really want people entering in cause of absences to bring the leave control. So let me kind of explain. Leave controls really are what we do leave balances against. That's kind of the major categories, the payroll control. It's the thing that we actually program the leave accrual engine against. So that's really kind of the guts of the leave system. However, the cause of absence is kind of like an explanation of. And so you can kind of almost see here, if I just sort of filter to this value, they set up two different personal. Well, they have one leave code, LV personal D, which says to me it's a leave, it's for personal time, and it's in the unit of measure of days. But it's explained during the process of leave, leave request and so forth to be PL or PLC. So that's kind of why it's a many to one, if that makes sense to you. You have multi-cause of absences, maybe, that still connect to one leave code. So that's kind of the concept there. So once you enter one, it'll pull the other one. So as I'm data entering the bottom here, and I kind of go here, and I just type, PLD, drops that in. I'm docking this person, poor person, whatever. So I'm just going to go ahead and kill that out. So, all right, so what else do we got? Leave comment comes in automatically, but you could override that. That's sometimes useful. They will see that leave comment on self-service. So if you say this person's a big pain in the ass, they're going to see that in the self-service system, and you will not be a happy camper. So be careful how professional you are when you're typing these comments. This is the design here this is probably a simple example here. So what you have here is you have 148.5, you have pending leave units, the current leave unit, leave balance after posting. And tell me when you look at this for this one person, okay, so it's kind of like took us a while to get this right, but what we're trying to say to you, and it may not be obvious, maybe it is obvious to you, is that the 5 is simply the representation of all the leave units of the same code for the same employee that aren't on this line. So the system is actually seeing all these records and adding those ones up, and that's where the 5's coming. When I go to here, it doesn't see this record, but it sees this record and these records. So the reason we're doing that is that any time, no matter what line your eyes gaze at, your leave balance here will be representative of the final leave balance. I don't care how many more of these are in the batch for that same person. It's always going to show me the same value, and that kind of demonstrates it pretty cleanly there, right? And that was something that was a problem because what you would see normally was 148.5, 147, 146, you know what I mean? So unless your eyes gaze to the last record, you actually weren't seeing what the balance is really going to be, and people found that to be a problem. So that's why we introduced sort of this type of presentation. Does that make sense to you, Brenda?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, that threw a lot of people, but I think it's kind of logical. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Calendar update. So when we do docking, and you can actually keystroke a docking transaction in here, the system can have the ability to update the calendar automatically. And so remember in our conversation yesterday when we talked about payroll calendars and how they represent days worked, but one of the reasons that you can be subtracting days worked is for docking, then can I enter a docking here and update the calendar, if you will, all at the same time? And that's why it's a drop-down, by the way, because do I want to update the calendar as a full day or half day? We don't support quarter day. We could, but we really don't. So basically from a docking perspective, if you're being docked, you're generally being docked either at a half day or a full day. We really haven't gotten much pushback on that, quite honestly. So, I mean, somebody's like, maybe use 1 hour extra of their bank. You know what I mean? Most districts will kind of go, okay, we'll give you a break. You know what I mean? It's only when it's, usually just even when it's a full day. It's kind of like mean to sort of say half a day even, but you get it. So that's kind of that. And then the docking rate. So we do have different kinds of dockings, and the docking is basically, and I don't know if we've got any set up. I think we did based on what we were seeing earlier. Yeah, docking. Yeah, so all the docking. Okay, dock, a personal leave dock, a sick dock, and a workers' comp dock. So these are all different reasons why they're being docked. And the rate is being set to the daily rate. And we just had a very long explanation today about how we compute daily rate. But hopefully, knock on wood, we compute it correctly. Daily rate is then computed and multiplied by, generally speaking, a 1 or a 0.5. And by the way, we do express our leave units in positive numbers here. This time journal is only used for taking leave. It is not being used for accruals, generally speaking. Now, again, you can do a negative, and that'll put it back, but it'll still be perceived as just an adjustment of the taken. Okay, it is not adjusting the accrual. The only way to do that is in the payroll journal, but you cannot do that in the time. The time journal can only, quote unquote, be perceived by the system as a increase of taken and or possibly an adjustment of taken, like a leave bank shift. I'm taking stuff from the leave bank, stuff like that. So that's kind of the thought process there. So you can do a negative. If you do a doc, I believe, and enter something different than a 1 or a 0.5, and I think we saw a doc on here, didn't we, earlier? I thought we saw a doc. I just want to see. Or maybe I entered a doc. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, see how this is going on? So if I type in 0.75, oh, it lets me do it. Yeah, I get an error somewhere. I think it may be during posting then. I think it's during posting. Yeah, I don't think I tell you right now. I probably should tell you right now, but I think I tell you during posting. You get a problem. Sooner or later, you're going to get a problem with that. You generally can't, because the system is going, wait a second. You're telling me half day, and you're not putting a 0.5. I'm confused. I don't understand what you're doing. And same thing with the 1.0. So, and again, you can do a negative 1.0 and a negative 0.5. Good example is I docked them this cycle, and they pled their case out. And the judges in the case decided to reverse the doc. How do I reverse the doc? Okay, same thing. You just go back in here. You do a negative 1, a negative 0.5. You again hit the calendar update, and it will put it back as a day worked. So reverse it completely, perfectly. Furthermore, it'll put it back in their paycheck. So it's a very kind of fluid process to go doc or undock. Positive is a doc, negative is an undock, half day, full day, daily rate, on 5, ready hot. I mean, that's pretty much it. So, it's a real simplistic system. We do have another system that you should know about. We haven't had a lot of people use it. We know that one Pennsylvania district uses it a lot. It's in the payroll journal. What it does is it automatically figures out that they need to get docked by analyzing their balance and seeing that their leave balance, their personal or their sick, have gone to the negative. And then if you've set it up correctly, it will automatically determine the docking all kind of for you. So that's something else that we do offer. We are finding more and more that people don't want to rely on such an automated system. There's more, need for negotiation in this area. In this district I'm thinking of, it's written in the union rules. It's very unionized, and it's just like, that's it. There's not much flexibility. Okay, so this screen is different. It's the same table, it's the same page, and there's just a lot of hocus pocus going on, if you will, to make it show or not show, if you will, properly. So I just want you to know that. I'll go ahead and post this one as well. And this will also go into the journal, hopefully. So it's going right into my payroll journal as well, because we're doing that delay. So it should get there as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you, somebody, for doing all that data entry for me, by the way. I don't have to do anything here. Okay, so in the both time and leave, there'll be no data because I'm the one who put that in there. And I'm not going to go through it and do any postings. But suffice to say that it's basically both screens I showed you all in one. That's all it is. So if I come here, these are the same screens we saw on the time side. And after a certain point, there's all the leaves data. It's exactly the same screens, just mushed together. All we're really doing is just showing all the fields. And you can then say, okay, this is my sub, and this is the person who they sub for. And again, I'm not sure you would data enter it that way. I think it would come in that way from ASOP, SubFinder, etc. Okay, so that's Time Journal. You know everything I know about Time Journal. I did not teach you the overtime calculator and comp time calculator because I am not authorized to teach you that because I don't know it myself. I don't have that certification, but we'll try to put that together. If you are interested, you just gotta let us know. Just have Heidi or Tina or somebody kind of alert us, and we'll kind of set that up. Okay, so in your payroll journal now, if I test my line count, I should have about 1,100 records, and I do have a test journal there. By the way, I do advise thinking about always setting up in all your databases, all your clients, a time journal of maybe all 3 types that are basically test, and have it flow to test. so that you have a test time journal that flows to the test payroll journal. And often, when you're setting up new controls, you're practicing whatever scenario, it's just so nice to be out of the way, because you might want to do this on the production system, but you still want to be out of their way. And so you want to be in the test time journal. You want to post it, let it flow to the time payroll journal, do a calculate, and then throw it out. That's kind of a very typical flow where we're testing things out. So I just wanted you to, and somebody's got, you can see, 219 transactions in this test journal right here. Insurance refunds. They were practicing something, probably. I'm not going to worry about it right now. Okay, so the default journal's here. Okay, so at this point, what do you do? Well, you don't do anything. It's pretty rare that you would do anything at this point. If you happen to have already posted, and you have a mistake with some of the variable time that came from the time journal, could you fix it? Well, let's just try to analyze what we're looking at, and maybe we could. So if you come in here, the first two lines, if you kind of study them, you'll notice that they're actually what I call a pair. And they actually came from one line in the time journal. The first line always carries the earnings, and the second line is basically the paid hour, because we want to still get analytics on paid hours. The taxable amount on the earnings line also will have the same value as the hours of the line below you. So you can see it's $12.86. I've got a taxable amount of 1, which is 1 unit or 1 hour, whatever you want to think it is as, and then the hours is 1. Do I have the allocation here? Yeah, there's the allocation. I could go show the allocation, right? I mean, I could, well, I'm not sure where I show the allocation. I got to go to Navigate, I guess, to see the allocation, yeah. So I could see the allocation. I could change the allocation from here if I wanted to. One thing to be careful about with allocations is sometimes people get mixed up. This allocation, let's say, is the one that came from the job, and they go here, and they actually just start changing it. And in their minds, they're changing it just for this transaction. Well, next cycle, they don't do anything, and then later on they realize it's really been changed. Well, yeah, I mean, we're giving you access to whatever this allocation code has in it. You're going to it in a real way. It's only going to be unique to that transaction if it was created just for that transaction, like we talked about before. But if it just flowed in from the employee's job, it's a master record, and this is giving you access to the data underlying that master record. So, be aware of that. Because some people have made that mistake, and we make it a couple times, that's it. They don't make it anymore, but it's an important part of training. I would definitely want to emphasize that to the users. Okay, so if I wanted to manipulate this, I could just go $13, and it's changed. Not a problem. There is, though, however, I will just tell you this, there are fields behind the scenes, and I don't even know if they're even on the screen you can even show, but there's a field called hourly rate that we did bring over. And it did not get changed. And I'm just thinking that it's not even on the screen. So let me just prove it to myself. I think it would have been called hourly rate. That's why. Yeah. Let me just double check it. So that's the only reason why I'm not a big fan of it. It's probably not my first choice. Let me just kind of zoom this record. And it's not the end of the world that it doesn't get reflected correctly. It's used for paycheck differentiation. So I'll explain that in a second. But let me just go, what would be called, hourly pay? Yeah, you see that, $12.86? Didn't change, right?
Okay.
Did not change. So what we use it for is, how people sometimes get paid multiple rates, sometimes even for the same job for whatever reason, like a shift differential, something like that. Mm-hmm. Well, we found out early on that on the paycheck, they expect to see the hours for each of the different rates kind of summarized. So we use that rate, we store it there only so that when we print the checks, we know how to buffer the records. So if you change this to 13, the rate's still going to be 12, which is okay, and it's just going to, it's just going to create buffered data. It's going to look maybe hard to understand from the employee's perspective, but it's not going to kill you. The earnings will still be right. It's just kind of create separate records when maybe that wasn't your intention. So normally, if you really find you're screwed up here, another way to do it would be just to filter for this one employee. Just go to PB and J, all right? Right, so there's that employee. What you could do is just delete that employee. Just kill that employee, go back to the time journal, reprocess their data entry, post it. It'll go to the bottom. Who cares? It's going to sort it eventually anyway. And so a safer way, I think, because you're really You found a problem. It was a time entry problem. Go fix it in the system that has been built for time entry. System is built for calculating payroll. So, that's kind of my own view. You can edit this data. You can certainly delete records. If you decide, what, those hours are bogus, there'll be no risk to doing that. If I go ahead and delete that now, there's no risk except the employee might be mad at you, but you know what I'm saying. You can delete with no problem. But editing, I don't know. This is again the variable pay I'm only talking about here. Okay, so at this point I've beat that horse to a pulp. So I'm going to come back here. We purposely put these icons up here to be your kind of go-to icons. In other words, if everything is going correct and you're not having any kind of interesting, weird problems, knock on wood, you could pretty much run the entire payroll from this promoted set of icons here. We do have other ones that you can go to. A good example is if I printed all the checks, I want to void all of them. That's an example. I could come in here and void all checks somewhere here, I think. Yeah, void all checks. Okay, and you don't see that on the front tab, right? It wasn't promoted. So that's an example where there are reasons why you'd want to go there. The navigate, certainly, because we get to different things, particularly the employee's card, the show edit, the allocation. Those are two that are probably the most important. Ledger entries less so. And these guys, I don't like at all, and I would stay away from them. They just don't make any sense. Comments are pretty rare. We don't make sense. We do have some nice reports. I'm going to come to them a little bit later, and we'll talk about them. But the first thing to do is the first option, right? And we kind of did this on purpose, is calculate. Okay, so when you hit calculate, you get a screen like this. And the screen will generally have the pay cycles already selected for you, and only if there's data already in there and or there's only one pay cycle that you have. So this example, I think you only have one pay cycle, so kind of no matter what, it's going to have it in there. So it's detecting the pay cycle, start date, pay period, pay date, yeah, pay date's 10/31. So it thinks it's doing period 8 right now. If that's not right, well, then change it. But you need to make sure. It's your job to make sure that that's right. And it probably thinks that's right because I'm on October 22nd. So it says, yeah, you probably want to cut that one. If you go, no, it really should be the 7th cycle, then change it. And of course, why would I on the 22nd of October be doing a check that was due to be printed on you get the idea. So anyway, be careful there. Make sure it's right. You can put an override pay date there. You'll have another opportunity to override the pay date during the check printing. Both of those places are valid, and sometimes why is that necessary? Well, for some reasons they set up the schedule and nobody realized that that's a Saturday, or they just decide to advance it for whatever reason. So this is why these features are there, is to be able to do that. All right, so I'll hit OK there. Get your pay cycles in. Override calculation order. The master calc order is what will happen if this is left blank. And suffice to say that's right most of the time. The occasionally times that we do override calculation orders are fairly rare. They could be during the summertime. There may be certain types of deductions you just don't want to run during the summer. And instead of sort of disabling them at the payroll control level, you can just have a calc order that just excludes them, and therefore they'll be ignored. It can be for the leave accrual. So there could be multiple reasons. We'll go do a drop down and see which ones they have. They have the leave accrual, the master calc order, and an insurance premium holiday, which I don't even know what that is. But anyways, that's what they have in this example. Blank is master. The reason the system knows that is because master has the master order checkbox checked. That's how it knows it. Okay. Include employees already paid. I always keep that checked. That simply means that if I did any kind of entry for the employee, any kind of entry, let's just say I did an adjustment of their leave, the system will detect that in that pay cycle and say the employee's already been paid, and if you didn't check that checkbox, it will skip them. Not a good thing. I don't find there's really any reason to ever, I haven't figured out really why in a process flow perspective you ever would want to tell the system to run a calc and purposely go ahead and only, process people that haven't been paid, which is what unchecking that checkbox would deliver for you. So again, my advice is to keep it checked. Restrict to entered employees. Well, this is kind of bad because what that means is I will only calculate the people that are in this batch. Well, remember, our teachers aren't even in this batch primarily. Remember, as I told you, they're not dropping in. The only reason that, a few of them will be here is because a few of them have some variable pay. So obviously not a good thing. Fairly rare to do that. The time is to do that is when you're doing a small run and it's all variable based, meaning it's all came from the time journal. I have like 6 people, they're hourly, we forgot them for some reason. Okay, I process it. It's a perfect time to pick that checkbox. Perfect time. If it's somebody I want to just do and just drop them in automatically, and there's really, you'd have to unclick this and then filter down to here. I want to delete this, by the way. I don't want any filters on this part. So generally, I'm not going to do this. Clear previously calculated entries first. I almost always check that. The only times that you wouldn't do that is if you're actually trying to just add one person to the batch. And so in that case, you know somebody didn't get dropped in because they were blocked. Oh, crap, they were blocked. So you can go ahead and filter for that one employee, but be careful because if you have this checked, then it'll clear out everybody else, and then it'll only put back in the one person. So you have to understand the computer is very literal. So you have to decide what you want to do. Typically, and by the way, the entries that you see on the screen are considered to be non-calculated entries. They will never go away unless you delete the whole batch, but otherwise it will never go away by anything you're doing in this calculate routine. They are considered to be non-calculated. They were manually created in the way the computer thinks. The calculated entries will be the FIT, their contract salary, their net pay, all those records. And so that's what the clear previously calculated entries for first is doing. So in a clean payroll, let's say it doesn't matter how I do it now because only entries in here are non-calculated. In other words, I even can demonstrate that. If I click here and say, give me all the calculated entries, I'll get none, right? So that just kind of proves to myself, so I'm just kind of showing you that. Yeah, I've noticed this, by the way. Hey, Bill, watch this. There's nothing we can do about this because we're not controlling this, but watch what happens to this screen right here. I've been noticing this. See up here? So watch what happens when I flip this. Did it switch? No, it didn't switch. Oh, no, I thought it switched. I thought there was something that switched it to the different tab, like went here a little while ago. I've been having a little bit of issues where I click on something and all of a sudden the tab switches on its own. I figured out what's causing it. I know it must be a keystroke I'm doing. Okay, so restrict to entered employees. I explained that. Okay, we're going to clear that. It doesn't matter whether I clear or not. It doesn't matter at this point. Recalculate only employees that are incomplete or have errors. So the system is going to calculate everybody, but some people could have errors. And so what you can do is solve those people and then just go ahead and recalculate just those people, again, just to save time. We can resort when complete. I like to resort when complete. Personally, but it takes more time. But the computers run so fast these days, I think it's just worth it to resort. It used to be on very large batches. We wouldn't do that. We would suffer through having everything all kind of all over the place, and we wouldn't care because it wasn't worth spending the time waiting for it to sort. But the computers have gotten faster, the program's gotten faster, and so therefore I think it's kind of worth it to do it. Skip extra withholding. So that's useful, kind of like if you're doing like a summer pay run or just paying, let's say you're doing a separate coaching pay run, stuff like that. That's kind of when people want to skip the extra withholding on their FIT, SIT. Contract payout mode, when you put the system in contract payout mode, those are for districts that are paying people over 10 months, but they're paying them as if they're paying them over 12 months. They're in essence savings and getting that as a lump sum payout in June before they leave on the end of June. No checks required is on the leave accrual. So that becomes appropriate when we're doing the leave accrual batch because we're not printing checks, and so that'll be important then. And you can't even pick that until you pick a calc order that would be the leave one. So that's pretty much that. We'll hit OK. And now we can just talk and enjoy ourselves because this is going to go through some time. I don't know how big is Perkins? Do you know how many employees Perkins has?
I don't know. How many employees does Perkins have? Do you know? She
doesn't know off the top of her head?
Yeah, no. She said there was 572 W-2s, but that would have been subs and everything.
Oh, okay.
I think it's about 400. I was working on an unemployment report the other day, and their quarterly totals. I think it was Perkins I was running that on.
Yeah, so this takes some time, We probably won't do a lot of these, hopefully. Yeah. But this is where you expect to spend the time. And, you're doing this 24 times a year. This is, I mean, if you actually looked and followed what the computer was doing in terms of code, what actually it's doing, you would go, oh my God. I mean, if you actually watched it from a SQL perspective, you'd go, oh my God. I mean, we're talking millions of lines of code are being run. So the fact that it just spins through these things this fast to me is always amazing. This is where computers just, it's crazy how fast it goes through some of this stuff. Because it really is a complex level of analysis it's doing, trying to get everything right. Some of the FIT calculations, all that stuff's complicated. But anyway, so it's cruising through. Not doing bad. But at the very end, it's going to sort. So even though I'm calculating all this data, it's going to go ahead and sort it at the end. So that's why, people go, oh, dang, I had to wait for the calculator, not have to wait for the sort. So if you don't want the sort, just don't do the sort. Doesn't bother me. But then if you want to go up and down in the batch, well, it's kind of confusing, because basically the FIT and NetPay and all the calculated entries for just the people who are in front of you will all be at the bottom. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, well, how do you even look at this data? Now, you can kind of, because you can actually click on this column these days, and it will just sort on that. So that is a new advancement since this new release that you can just click on that. So, now I think actually it's going to do it now. So I've got processing errors of 1, processing warnings of 181, and I got 3 cents. So I've got 1 error here. So we're going to have to deal with that. This is good. And we don't know who it is yet, but at least we kind of see this. The warnings usually, we'll see what the warnings say. But as I hit OK, it's going to sort. So let's just let it sort. So we got to figure out what the warning. The first thing you say to the operator is, so we've got to solve these errors and warnings, or at least the errors, before you go to the next step. You say to them, look, do not, and repeat, do not go starting into anything else until you resolve these errors. Por favor. So they the problem is that when they call us to the support desk, they've gone too far and just ignored every warning they were getting out of the system. And that's irritating, for everybody concerned. So you want to make sure that all errors, and how we see errors will be where? I don't think we see them. That's one of the things we don't see on here. I guess we assume there would be no errors, but I'll show you how we see errors. So it finishes now, and it's resorted. The very first person, we see earnings, FIT, NetPay, employer Medicare, STRS board, and then we start the next employee. But before we do anything, you don't want to get too rambunctious. You want to go navigate, no, maybe not, actions, calculation errors, right there. It's under actions because it's in this whole section called payroll. So I'll click on here. Okie dokie. So you see a big screen, and you get a lot of it's in another batch, right? So you get a lot of another batch. Let's just see if the warnings seem to be all in another batch. So that's all you were getting is, remember that other batch had all those like weird life insurance things? Mm-hmm. So that's all that is except for this guy right here. So, okay, so he's got a bad payroll status of invalid. So somebody, maybe he's not even in the batch, but is complaining. This system does not like, and I think I've repeated this to you before, but I'll repeat it again, or say it again, is that it does not like invalid payroll statuses for unblocked employees. Okay, so let's just write this down, or at least I'm writing it down, AS0865. So the first thing I'm going to do is just see if they're in the batch even. They might not even be in the batch. AS0865. Oh, they are in the batch. Okay, and nothing calculated. So it's a sub that's having some problems. So, of course, I could close the screen and go to their card, but I really don't have to do that. I just go to their card here. So you do want to advise your operators, don't bother closing the screen. Come on, that's old school. Okay. Just go open your card, will you? Okay, we see the invalid status. So probably what I would do is I would click on it, and I would see that they don't have a default job and it's required. So it's telling me exactly what the problem is. If I can't figure that problem out, I'm kind of in trouble. So I'm first going to go look at jobs. I see they have sub-teacher and sub-teach and sub-paraprofessional. I don't know which one should be the default one. I don't even care, quite honestly, because it doesn't matter to me. So I'm just going to pick this one and make this primary. And that's it. Okay. This guy will not recompute, I don't think, on his own. I don't think. Let me see. If I kind of just close and open it back up, will it do it? Let me see. No. So the way to actually get it to recompute itself is just to go Actions, Validate Employee, and hit OK. And now it became valid. Okay, so Actions, Validate Employee. So I had to tell it to go ahead and revalidate. normally it doesn't. I don't know. It's actually interesting. I'm not sure what causes it to. It may be that you have to run the validate on your own. I just can't remember, but that's one of those areas that if you say, is there any way that it can be figured that out on its own and just reset the valid right then, let us know that's a problem. I just don't know. I just don't know if that's something that it should do or not. So what do we do now? We come back and we're on this journal. We never calculated this person. So let's just go ahead and clear this out, and let's try to do what actually we saw the option had. Let's go ahead and now rerun this guy, okay? I was going to say, what's it going to do? You notice that? So notice what's happening, right? So as I click this button, remember I had that checked? Okay, I like that. So that's important because I was just curious about whether it said clear and recalculate. Wouldn't I get into a box? It would clear all the calculated entries, but only then recalculate the one person who's incomplete? That didn't make sense to me. So I'll go ahead and, yeah. And I'm still going to resort again because, again, it's going to add just this person's records to the bottom, and I still want everything put back together like Humpty Dumpty. So it scrolls through. One person's completed. We got no errors, and it resorts it. Right. So it's important not to clear if you're just going after the people that had the problems. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
But that was an efficient way, real efficient deal with that. Nothing complicated, but again, just do it. A lot of times the problems they'll have will be things like federal withholding, state withholding. They have the authority in without the filing status, or they don't even have a record in, something like that. So those are the kind of things that you'll see. And they just fix them and do what I just did. And again, what's nice is, let's say I have 5 of them. I can fix all 5 of them and then just go right back to that calculate one time, say just go ahead and handle the people that you need to handle, and it just does, and you're done,
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. Real simple. Now that calc single employee, I'm going to kind of go ahead a little bit while this thing is still running. That calc single employee will be kind of used if you're making a change. So let's say you go, oh yeah, I need to make a change. I forgot. And we'll do an example. So I have in front of me, let's just kind of go down a little bit here. Where are my teachers? Okay, so I got a teacher. I've got Ashley here. I know Ashley very well. So Ashley, I have in front of me something I just realized. She asked me to change her FIT exemptions. I'm just making that up, right? So I'm going to go ahead, again, navigate. I'm going to her card. I'm going right to her tax authority, which we now know all about that stuff. And we're going to go ahead and change her allowances to 2. And we're going to come out of here. We see our FIT, by the way, is $102. So now what do? Well, the problem is nothing's going to happen unless you do something. So back to your home, back to calculate single employee, right? If you go ahead and on this option, don't click this button, okay, then what the system is going to do is it's going to delete this record. And then since it's all calculated, it's going to put it at the bottom. So I'm not going to sort this time. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate this person. And she just disappears, and she's at the bottom now. So if I kind of go to the bottom, she's here because I just added her to the bottom of the whole sheet, which is not a big deal. Believe me, nobody cares about any of this stuff. When you print checks, vouchers, all that's all going to resort anyway. So it doesn't make a difference, but I just want to demonstrate what it's like when it goes to the bottom. And notice the FIT is lower right now. So I just want to kind of show you that as well. Okay? So that's kind of how we would purposely do something. You can add records. So if you said, I want to add some miscellaneous deduction, you could come in here, hit your new button, which is where? I don't know where the new button is. Is there a new button? I never know where the new button is. That's interesting. All right, well, forget it. The way you do is right mouse click and go new line. And you come in here, F8, just F8, F8, F8. I'll do a miscellaneous. I don't know if there's a miscellaneous. No, I'll do after tax miscellaneous. Just guessing. Yeah, there we go. Not a normal control for this employee, blah, blah, blah. And you might just do a minus $450, something like that. Calc single employee, and you're good to go. I'm going to delete this record because I don't feel like doing that, but that's how you would insert a record. If you want to change a record, so if I went up to here, the FIT again, and said, know what, I really want to make that minus $100. When I do that, it'll say, are you sure you want to override this calculated value? I'll say yes. And at that point, it becomes an entry that's not calculated. It kind of becomes like it came from the time journal. It's kind of like it's going to stick. If I now calc single employee and process it and don't sort it, watch what's going to happen. It's kind of funky. So notice her first record is FIT. It's not following in the normal flow. Well, that's because it kind of has to do that because it's already predetermined at this point. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of funky. If I were to go ahead and calculate her again and then sort, it means sort the whole batch, right? Does the entire batch and puts her now among all her friends, all her A friends, away from her Y friends. So I just want to show you just the nuances a little bit there about a calculated record, how it kind of floats to the top. If you think about floating to the top, it's not really floating to the top. What the system did is it deleted all the entries except FIT, and then it just added new records to the bottom. Right, and now I've asked it to sort it. So that's kind of why it floated to the top. It didn't really float to the top. It really, all of the other companion records were blown out, and then new records were created and put below it. So that's kind of why it does that. I'm just giving you a little bit more insight into sort of what's really going on with the computer than I normally would give for a typical, operator. Although sometimes I do find payroll operators are pretty much wanting to understand all this stuff. They really do kind of want to know. They're a little bit more into the details than, like on the AP side of the business. All right, so how are we doing on time, by the way? Good? Yeah, we're good. Good. We're making good progress, I think. All right, so after this calculates, we'll pretend that we've done all of our data entry, manipulation stuff, right? So again, we can filter different ways. We can put the employee number. That's the typical go-to way. I want to analyze one person. I'll just type in that ID and filter it. Maybe I want to look at all of the, I don't know, let's just say STRS board. So STRS board, maybe. Why is it not coming up? Board. And now I've got them all in front of me. So I can look at them, go, yeah, that's great. Let me blank that back out. That kind of thing. Pay cycle code will mean nothing to you because you only have one pay cycle code. Bank payment types. Do I have any computer checks in here? Oh, look at that. You guys are phenomenal. All electronic. And calculated. Again, show me all the calculated entry. We talked about that before. So electronic. So one thing about electronic I want to say is that we do have a process, and remind me, I can talk about it, maybe not in this session, but another session, where you can run out a direct deposit ACH between the pay cycles for people that are pre-noting, get that off to the bank and get the pre-note clear before you even process. So it's kind of re-cleared. But I just want to make the point that if any of these people are marked electronic, I still don't know necessarily they're going to be in my ACH file. And the reason I don't know is because what could happen is that the system could be in a pre-note situation. So in that case, they still will get a check. So we may run this right now and still get a check for a few people, and that's why. So I just want to kind of bring that up to you. They will be the ACH file, but they'll be the ACH file with zeros. So that's kind of how that works. That's why people like to pre-note between cycles, so that they can then sort of claim we never have to pre-note. Some clients, by the way, don't even pre-note. They just say, we just don't do pre-noting. We just make sure we did enter everything correctly. I'm going, okay, if you say so. So, there's the calculation errors, by the way. You know that button right there, Brenda? I went over here to find it.
Uh-huh.
It's just sitting right here. Now, by the way, why is it dimmed out? It's because there are none. There's no calculation errors right now. Yeah, showing warnings, it won't light up unless it's got errors in it. And then when you click it, it kind of then shows you the warnings too. But it's really meant to be focused on errors. It's kind of the purpose. Okay, so our next step is Error Check Online. Again, same thing. Follow the flow. Follow the flow. Don't go right to printing checks. Go to Error Check Online. This is designed to check other things. The calculate checks certain things, mainly that the master files aren't set up correctly. But there's still other things that could be bad. One could be that you've got some account strings that aren't proper. You've got something that's blocked maybe on part of the account string. Just anomalous data, basically just something that doesn't feel right. There's a lot of additional checking. And K-12 built this, continues to add more and more checking inside of it, and so it becomes more and more your friend to try to prevent any kind of possible error situation that we're going to learn later, particularly in the posting. The reason this is important is that the flow of this is going to be that we're going to export our direct deposit, we're going to tell the system we've transmitted to the bank, and at that point, It's locked and loaded down. And the only thing that they can do is post. But if they can't post, they're kind of like having to call a support desk because they're kind of in a stuck spot. And we don't want them to call us. So we really try to make sure that they run these programs, and we try to make sure that we find out things that are causing people not to be able to post. How do we test for it more and more in this Error Check Online? So we continue to want feedback to make sure that we try to trap all possible errors that we see people coming up with. And they, believe me, they keep coming up with doozies. That's for dang on sure. So Error Check Online, it's a process. It's not a report. It's a process. You click here. This is that compare pay cycle to earn pay cycle. Nah. This is probably important. What this does is this, when we post to the GL for the expenses, the benefits, we do all kinds of fancy substitute math, and we're going to kind of explain that in a later session, of how we do all the substitute math to figure out what the account string should be for, the debit, if you will, for the FICA, the Medicare, the board, SCRS, medical, et cetera. And the problem is that the data is not really living there right now, so the system has to go out and sort of figure out what that's going to look like and even test that. Do you want to do that? Well, if you check that, it's going to make this process run longer, but yet it will then have checked that. So that's kind of the rub. It's going to add time. That's why we have it. You have to opt in because of the time delta. So let's just see how bad it is. 1%, 2%. Yeah, it takes a decent amount of time. So, I mean, if I just stop it right now quickly and just run it again as an example, you see the difference? Like night and day difference. Yeah, it's a lot of programming it has to go through to kind of calculate that substitute account string. And so therefore, when it doesn't have to do that, everything else it's checking for is much less of a list. So it's finding one problem with one person, well, two problems with one person, sorry. You see where it says that error count? So it's calculating net pay, actual net pay. That's not the problem, but it has two other errors. So to see the errors, I can do a couple things. I think I can just drill it. So we drill this. Okay. Now let me try to get it to you a little bit better. Total percentage of does not equal 100%. So I've got an allocation issue with this employee DD 0369. So I'm going to go ahead and simply escape. I'm going to go in and put DD 0369, and I must have typed something wrong. Oh, DD Andrew 0369. Okie dokies. There's the nurse, blah, 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 allocation. I'll click on this button no matter where. Navigate, show edit. Hello, that account string doesn't look good at all. Anyway, to save time, I'm just going to go ahead and pick a different account string. I'll pick Carrie's, Bruno's.
Yeah.
Don't do this at home, guys. That's what I'm doing. I'm leaving my filter again, coming back to my home, going Error Check Online. I'm not going to click that checkbox. And when it finishes completely where it doesn't find any errors, it should just simply come back and say it doesn't have any errors. So that's what our goal is, of course. And I'm going to take the chance not to check that, but I'm going to show you something else. No errors detected. Okay. So the next thing we could do is this test report. The test report obviously is a report. We can print it to a PDF. We can print it to a paper. We can print it to the screen. I will print it to the screen. It has lots of options these days. Exclude employer-paid accruals, which I like to, but you can certainly put them in if you want. I'm trying to get less data, not more data. Show year-to-date amounts. I'm usually not that interested in. Do I want to print the total page only? A lot of people do print the total page only because they're having a sense of what it should look like. How do I want to sort it? Do I want to have a limit? If they're getting close to their contract limit, do I want to be warned about it? Do I want genders to print? I'll say, print non-zero genders. I don't think that'll be the case. Distribution recap. Do I have any computer checks? Print non-zero only. EIT. I'm just not sure how that works with you guys. You guys do use the earned income tax, the local tax. And the distributions. The distributions is probably the biggest thing that makes it voluminous. So I'm going to go ahead and not include that at this point. And the distributions just makes it large. So I'm not a big fan of running that, but I can understand why districts might want to run it initially, but I advise highly against it after a certain point. It just seems so much data, but it's up to you. This report takes a little while to just churn out because it's complicated. It's doing all kinds of, basically what it's really doing between you and me, it's pseudo running the paycheck print management code unit. It's actually running the exact code to print a check and then puts it in more in a report format. So that's why it kind of leverages a whole piece of code that's pretty complex, but makes it easier to write this daggone thing. So employee A, oops, let me get back to 150. So again, the document number won't be filled in yet because we haven't cut checks. So we do recommend usually after they've cut the checks to print this one more time to a PDF and save it in their network folder somewhere. I don't care where. But it's kind of obvious what it's doing. So we'll just kind of go through it, and I'll go to the end, kind of come back a little bit. Yeah, so the total page, I guess, is it starting here? Let me see where it's starting. Yeah, it's starting on page 114. Earnings. Yeah, so it's kind of unwieldy in some ways. I'm trying to get it. my mouse is doing so fast. Here, maybe it'd be better to do this. So it's basically showing that I've got this job code, that amount of units, this rate, this amount of dollars. All these others are like hourly based. You can see I've got teachers dropping from 360,000, 443, so on and so on. It's starting the deductions, I guess, at a certain point. Not sure why it starts down like that. All right, and the next page. Yeah, so I guess you're seeing the total net pay for the report. We got 272 V-mails and just a few mails, and one not indicated, by the way. We don't know what that person is. We'll just pretend it is what it is, right? This is the distribution by payroll by the I think it's the payroll job location, a payroll location code. So it's basically saying where the people are distributed. Local tax is giving you the local taxes by these different sections. So you get the idea. I'm not sure why it's starting down like that. That's kind of a little bit weird. I don't know, Bill, if we should look at that or not, but that's kind of funky looking. You would think this would be up at the top. I guess it's designed to...
Well, it's because you've got all your... No, go back up to the top. Do you have... Are those earnings at the top and then...
Well, it's earnings to the left, it's deductions to the right. But it's just, you would think... So what's weird about this is you see that little space there between tutor and Medicare fringe? So I just don't know, there's something that Muhammad was doing. He's worked this report over so much, I hate for him to have to even go back into the OR with this thing, quite honestly. But it's just kind of, I think part of the thing is that it ends at the same spot. So it's almost like he's working up, with it.
Oh.
You guys have a lot of deductions in this. Daggone, look at that. Anyway, so that's the report. You can run it to a PDF, all that normal stuff. So we'll just assume that you'll do that later on in the process. Generate distributions. So do you have to run generate distributions and preview distributions? Absolutely not. No matter what you do with generate distributions and preview distributions, the system will ignore them and regenerate them upon posting. So it doesn't buy you anything in terms of saving you any time. The reason you do it is because people want to see the data. So we'll go ahead and do it because, I want to show you a couple things about it to analyze. So it will take a little bit of time, hopefully not too much time, but it could. And sometimes that happens, by the way. You see how the screen kind of lost it? If I do an Alt-Tab one time, usually it'll come right back. So I know that to be one Alt-Tab away. But a lot of times this kind of dialogue will disappear behind the page. It's not gone, but it's confusing to operators because they don't know if it's running. They see the hourglass, but they can't see where they are in the process. So when they complain about that, tell them, as long as you haven't clicked anywhere else and you're still in this app, just do a one Alt-Tab and you should be able to get to it. And that not responding is not to be worried about. What it just simply means is that the system is chunking away and the page just isn't getting anybody paying any attention to it. It's just being ignored, basically, because there's a program running kind of in front of it, if you will. So just don't worry about that. As long as you see the stuff scrolling through. Now, if it's locked and you just see the ID never moving, well, okay, now you got something else going on. But I don't think you'll ever see that. That's pretty rare. But generate distributions, what do we do with generate distributions? So we're basically putting into a page, a screen, all of the debits and credits that ultimately will be hit when we actually process this and post this to the general ledger, which is what that post button has over there on the right. And in that screen, you'll get a chance to see if the system detects any kind of validation errors primarily the ones that you'll be focused on will be the validator records. And again, I just don't know if you're in the validate mode, but if you're in the validate mode with the account strings, and based on either the substitute logic or just the way your account string was constructed, you've hit upon a combination that's not valid, well, then that's how you're going to find out about it. Bottom line. Now, just so you know, you generally will also find out about it if you run that error check online with that slower method I showed you. So if you check that, you'll pretty much get to the same result that this thing's getting. So if you spent the time on your error check online to do that, I kind of feel like this is kind of superfluous. The advantage of this one is that not only is it doing that same level of checking, but you also get to see it visually. And my headset is dying. I just heard the beep. Ah, there it goes, red. Always the same case. Let me just quickly switch red. Nope, not that button. This button. All righty. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Let me close the door just because it's there acoustics when I'm on the speakerphone and the door closed. Oh. All righty then. Making good progress here. So where are we at? K. All right. I only do this once. One thing to note is that there is, and I didn't check on this one, by the way, and that was a mistake. In payroll setup, there's a thing called auto preview. I think it's called auto preview distribution, something like that. And what that does is that slows down your calculate, and it generates the distributions during the calculation processes. So therefore, you would never have to generate distributions. The problem with me just clicking that button and not first clicking preview is they may have already been there. And it doesn't tell me that, hey, they're there already, don't press that button, because it doesn't know, it doesn't know that I might not have changed something in the back end, so maybe I really do want to generate it, Kind of be nice if maybe it said, hey, there's data out there right now, you sure you want to generate? Anyway, so you can't do auto preview. If you do auto preview, it'll slow down your calculate. The advantage of doing it is that if you do it that way, you can then click on another action here called budget check. And the system will go ahead, and only if the distribution entries are there, it can actually run them through the budget check. Decide count string by count string, do you have enough budget dollars to support this payroll? Don't have many districts using that functionality. A lot of them already kind of like, they go, well, look, it's payroll, I've got to be able to process it. But, if you can, I mean, and the budget check doesn't necessarily stop you, but it just gives you information to say that, yes, these account strings are valid, but you don't have any budget dollars to support it. And that's both at the earnings level and the expense level, the benefits level. So I don't hear, payroll operators never bring that issue up, by the way. That would all come from the finance department. So, anyway, so we do have that capability. I think the budget check, if I'm not mistaken, is on the action. I'm sure it's on the actions tab. I can't click on it now for obvious reasons. But we're almost done. What are those last four digits, Brenda? Is that the last four digits of their social number?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, so it's the first two initials of their first name, last name, like Deborah Delp is DD, and then probably 0353 is her. I just don't like using four digits of social numbers. You know what I mean? I don't know. Not a big fan. Personal information.
Right.
I know it's only four digits, but still.
Yeah.
that means you only have to guess five more. And it's easy to get the first three because you kind of know where they're born. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you think about it, you can actually pretty much very quickly figure out what their social number is. That's why it's not really good to use last four digits. I never do advise it. But nobody listens to me, so I just rant and rave all day. Nobody listens. All right, so W's, any X's, Y's. Okay, so if we click preview now, what you're seeing is, and if I filter on just one person as an example, I'm going to filter on that person.
And I'm going to further go in here and add in an entry type of what I call allocation. And what the system now is telling me, all of the debits related to the earnings. Again, the earnings is way over, I'm not sure where it is actually. Yeah, I can't even see the type of earnings it is. It's kind of hard to even read this screen, quite honestly. I mean, the amounts you got to move over because it doesn't make sense to leave them all the way over there. You know what I mean? Oh, there we go. That description is what I was looking for. So let me just kind of just do this real quick for you. This is very difficult. This description being down here is absolutely worthless. And the amount being way down here is double worthless. All right, now it'll make more sense. Oh, I got to reopen the screen. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Actually, you know what? Let me do this. Let me pick a teacher. I wonder if I can. They're all subs. I've got to find a teacher. Teacher. Filter to this value. And entry type of allocation. Yeah, that makes more sense. That should make more sense to you. So, although I completely don't understand 100% of it, we got salary earnings, and then we've got their name by there. I'm not really completely sure what I'm looking at. Let me see how the Medicare is splitting. Yeah, so I guess that they have two sets of earnings codes going on. If we actually study this person, they'll probably have, that's their contract salary, and that's some additional thing they're getting. I don't know what it is. But the system is debiting this to here on this one. And so if you study and look at, this line here for the Medicare, you can see there's a portion of it, except the only thing that was changed was the object. See, it went from 113 to 249. And so you can see the 1120 went 111 to 249. And everything else is the same, this segment, that segment. So that's the typical kind of substitution math that the computer figured out when it did all this generate distributions, that slow error check online does as well to try to check that. Now, the thing that you're looking for is failed validations. We didn't get any failed validations. So if you did get failed validations, you could come in here and say, give me failed validations not equal to 0. And then they all would show up right there. But you're not getting any. I am very curious. It's hard to believe that all these account strings are valid. But let me just see. Just want to look at one setup. I'm going to leave for a second and go to General Ledger setup. Just trying to. In General Ledger setup is where we actually have the validation mode turned on. Aha! Well, that'll do it. Yeah, so auto create just simply means don't worry about it. It's going to who cares, man? It's going to create it on its own. You don't have to worry about it. Well, that's not the way districts typically run. In North Carolina, they'd be against the law to run that way. They can't run that way. So I don't know in Ohio, and whether this is a test version. We might have changed it in our test environment, so I don't trust it even to be comparable to your live environment. But I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, and by the way, that budget check online would be where? Where is the budget check? You see budget check anywhere?
Mm-mm.
I don't. Did we remove our budget check? Huh. We had it here at one time. Don't know, Bill. We'll have to check that out. That's probably a note you and I should check out. Where'd budget check go? Because I don't see it on the screen. I don't know if it's something that you can put back on. Maybe customize this page, customize ribbon. I don't know how to even look sometimes. Yeah. Because these are the ones that are on. So the question is which ones are not on. Do budget check? No. Yeah, see, look, this is what's missing.
There it is, the workflow budget check.
All that is off and could be added, I guess, back on.
Can you add just budget check?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I say restore defaults, did it come back on its own? No. Huh. Let me move it down. How do I move it down? Yeah, down. All right, let's try that. I don't think I ever noticed that. Yeah, there it is. Huh. Interesting. I think what's happened is, Bill, they probably in the last release, it was sort of turned off on purpose. You know what I mean? Because nobody really uses it much.
Right.
And I keep training people on it. Anyway, just kind of funny. Anyway, I'm not sure we need to do anything with that because I think it's probably better leaving it off. And if somebody says I need it, then we can say turn it on. But we hate to confuse operators with too much icons, if they're not going to use it. All right. So once you've done, we're kind of going through the process. All this, the check printing is the next section. So in printing checks, one thing to note is that, and you always, this kind of confuses people, but we always have to print checks before you can export. And printing checks is a euphemism for printing something that applies, whether it's remittance advice or a check. Okay? It's important the pay cycles will default automatically. The only reason that's there is, in theory, I could have 2 cycles going, and I could cut the checks to 2 different cycles under 2 different checks, but that would be ridiculous. Payroll, bank account, payroll. Okay, this checkbox, there's 2 numbers running. If you click on this, it'll default to another set of numbers. And so that will get you a different running number sequencing, if you will, than live check numbers. The only people who seem to care about that is the auditors. I don't really care. So you can, if you want, not click this. It'll use the other number scheme, but still it'll print a remittance advice. It knows not to produce a check because it knows the person is, fully direct deposited. But I'll go ahead and do remittances in our example. Remember I told you can override one more place the check date? This would be it. So if you do enter a date, it will override it. So right now it's 2/10/22. That's what it's coming to. I'm not sure why it's coming to 10/22, in the honest truth. So maybe in that example, I'll go, well, I don't want 10/22. I really want 10/31/14. I'll go ahead and override it. And you'll see after it runs, all these dates will change. Reprint checks would be if I'm printing them again, but I generally don't advise that. For the most part, if something happens with the check run, you're going to void all checks and just go again. That's pretty much the typical classic way that we like to train people. We don't like to get too complicated here. Committee's check basically says, after I print every check, tell the software, the data set, that it really was printed for real. So that if anything happens after, printing 2,000 checks, it doesn't roll everything back, and you have paper, but you don't have it reflected in the system. So therefore, you have to just start over again and shred every bit of that paper. So that's kind of the theory. With a set of about 450 pieces of paper, I probably wouldn't bother. If it fails because of a network outage, let's say power goes out or something, let the whole damn thing roll back, shred that damn paper, and start over again. That's, to me, a cleaner way to do it. How do you want to sort it? So again, since if you're on the ERC, it kind of doesn't matter because the system will know what to do. And that's, again, why I skipped this option. I just realized that. So if you are on the ERC, what you can click on is that last option, send emails, do not print remittances. So when you do that, it will only produce pieces of paper for people that are set to get on the ERC paper, basically. Or, I think the choices are paper or electronic only. So if they're set to paper, and I think we have to see that they are set up somewhat on the ERC. By virtue of they have to have a user record set up with their employee number. So if we don't see those things happening, then we interpret them as not being an ERC person. We'll print them anyway. So it's only when we think that they're set up properly and you've selected that third mode will you, in fact, not get a piece of paper at all. So in my case, I do want the pieces of paper, so I'm not going to bother with that for right now. Typically, you might run it in this order. By pay location, all in the high school, and alphabetical within the high school. Got 2 message lines I can print contract, exclude leave balances, whatever. So I'm not going to worry about those right now. We'll go ahead and print those to a PDF at this point. Otherwise, if I print to the preview, it will not do anything. It'll show you, but it will not have updated anything. It's just kind of just for fake, and you can't print from the preview. So it's just kind of like showing you what it might look like, but it is not valid. So to make it valid, you either have to print to a printer or a PDF. By the way, we have many, many districts that print to a PDF, They store the PDF in a very important place, hopefully, knock on wood, and then they can go right to the export and get it off to the bank and actually print them the next day because they're usually approaching a deadline. And so they really don't want to have to sit there and wait for the babysitting printers. They'll rather babysit printers when the pressure's off from the ACH perspective. So this runs through, takes a little bit longer. It's kind of like the K-12E test report in the sense it has to go through a bunch of gyrations. Finally, the checks will appear. Rows received are net pay records. So I would believe that that's probably going to end up going to, it'll go to 300, 400, and then you should see the PDF, I believe. Pretty sure. Don't hold me to that, by the way. All right, 400. I think we're 400 plus, right? Well, maybe not. Yeah, we had 500. I didn't look that carefully. Well, maybe not. The payroll check, by the way, Brenda, is which we do have multiple choices of formats of payroll checks. And the way that you indicate which check you want to use is in the payroll journal templates. So remember we went to the time journal template. What we didn't do is we didn't go to the payroll journal template. And in there you will see an ID, and we can present those IDs to you. So I'll go ahead and open this.
Okay.
And so that's important because this format may not be the format they're currently using. I don't even know. It looks pretty straightforward. Yeah. Page 1, page 2. Okay, so I'll say that looks good. I'm not going to bother saving that because I don't really care. I mean, you want to look at anything more about this? You get the idea, right?
Yeah.
This looks like it's going to try to print on a self-sealer. And we do have features in the bank card that control, for instance, whether you want to put like the high school location or whatever on this. So you can turn all that stuff on. There's a lot of setup. It's all driven by the bank card these days. So I do invite you to look there. And if you want, we can look together. But that's just so you know, there's a lot of stuff you can do by switches and settings in the bank card. And that's our tendency is to build all our formats to basically use the same parameters that we drive from the bank card. That's kind of our thought process going forward. So I'll hit OK. At this point, see how the document numbers are in there at this point. So one thing to note is, do I even have any checks to cut? Well, I guess what I could do is I could filter, possibly, for blank documents. But a simpler way is just to go print the checks again, and it defaults back to the computer side. I'm not doing remittance advices only. I go to the PDF, and it makes us come back with nothing. Open. Ah, I got Deborah, old Deborah Delp. That's the person I was talking about, wasn't it? Yeah, so I got 7 checks. Okay, so these people are probably in pre-note status, I'm sure. I like the little pirate too, by the way. Very, very cool. Anyway, by the way, you see how this is messed up? That's because in the bank card, somebody didn't put the city in.
Oh.
Yeah, you want to fix that for sure. So that's the kind of stuff that you see. That kind of stuff. You got to use it's kind of an exacting eye, you know what I mean? Now, those signatures are coming on there, and I don't know, that may be because I'm not marked as allowing to be able to see the digitized signatures. So it might be a security reason why you're not seeing that. Maybe it is on normally. I don't know. But that probably has been fixed, but maybe not. Who knows? Maybe nobody's noticed it. I notice things like that. Okay, so at this point we export. But after we do the export right now, we're going to get a screen, and the screen's on my other monitor. But when we do the export, we're going to pick the bank, and I'm going to go now to the advanced tab for the payroll bank account. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to go to the edit. That's the right screen. Okay. So a couple things I want to see. One is in the transfer, which is the electronic side of this system, it's saying C: direct space deposit. That means that I need a folder just like that. So I just need to go look real quick and see if I have a folder called C: direct deposit. And see how it's like that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's transmitted. So you got to be careful. I'm having to adjust this to make sure that I deal with it correctly on my side, because I'm going to get an error if I don't. So I just made that one little change. I want to make this change as well. Okay. So it's important that whatever computer you're on, you have these two paths. Okay. So, it's interesting because, often those are paths particular to that operator, and so then somebody else is doing it from another workstation, and they start getting errors, and that's why. You generally speaking, that's kind of a hard network thing, and you don't want to put a network drive in there usually because, well, then it's available for a lot of people maybe to see, so it's kind of a sensitivity issue. Some of the settings for the check, I just want to show you where that's kept while we're here. Right, so right here. So print pay location, you might say something like that. And here you kind of don't want to say class. Nobody likes the word class. So, something like that. And that will be better. You will be happier with that. And the reason it's printing is just so that when you get these envelopes, remember they're getting all self-sealed, you can easily see that you can see when the high school ends and starts the middle school, starts the elementary school, and then maybe the group. The group is not important unless you're sorting by group. In other words, you want to have all the teachers together from all the building secretaries. I'm just making that up. So if you just go purely building and alphabetical, then you would just unclick that, and who cares, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't matter. You just care about the building, and that's it. Not sure. Some of this other stuff you have to just practice with, So you can put title, you can say, big cheese, whatever. Okay, so you get the idea there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the direct deposit. I fixed my folder, sorting by. There's a second report that can print that gives you by bank. I find that to be somewhat superfluous these days, so I'm not going to bother running that. You can preview this one, and it will really export the data. You have to allow for this client session because that's important because your computer is sending the operating system is asking me that question. It's not the nav application. It's actually the computer asking me that question. Is it okay to write a file to your hard drive? Is why that screen popped up. So this is running the export. It's going to run a report. You're going to look at the report and go, yeah, that looks great, and then you're going to close the screen, pretty much. But you can print it. I mean, it's no big deal printing it, except I don't know where it went. Oh, it's behind me. Okay, we'll go here and just format a little bit. Okay, checking. So somewhere in here, a pre-note will appear. There's one right there, yes. Amy, so these are the people who are going to be getting the checks. Right, so those are, your 7 pre-notes probably are right in here. So if I counted these yeses, I'm sure I'd get 7 of them. Not sure, but pretty darn sure. I'm almost positive. At the very end, let's go to the very end because I'm getting bored with this now. You do get a total. So you'll see here, net pay amount deposited. So again, I have 7 checks. If I 10-key those 7 checks, does it equal the delta between these two? Again, these are the kind of things that I would do just as an obsessive person to make sure everything smells right? Just make sure things are tying out. So net pay amount means everybody on this report and so forth. Now, if a person's got a complete computer check, I mean, they really meant to get a computer check, then they will not be in this total. So that you can't do it that way. But if everybody is electronic, like we tested everybody to be electronic, this net pay amount should agree to the end of that report that we looked at for cash and so forth for total net pay. So that's basically that. The next step would be transmitted. Now, what I have to say is that when you click this next button, you're locked and loaded. So it's really important that, all the error checking is done. Also, remind the user right after export, before transmit, maybe in their worksheets or whatever, maybe if you made any changes and you kind of have a sense that your K-12E test report that you saved as a PDF is not the current one, invite them to go ahead and run it again. At this point anyway, it's going to have those document numbers in there. So it's a good time to put that to the PDF. So maybe between these two steps, run this one to the PDF, get the doc numbers on there, just from an archiving perspective. In terms of other reports, before I do transmit, we do have some other reports. And one of the things I want to show you about is this standard test report. The standard test report can be run multiple ways. But one of the ways that I like to run it is I like to run it where it's pay control totals and posting group totals, one or the other. You can run one or the other. So I'm going to go ahead and do pay control totals. So it's just control totals at a high level. In other words, it's not per person. Now, people like to have this report printed as well. It's a simple report, nice and easy, nothing complicated about it, real simple to see. Kind of separates them by different types. People like to see this report. Just different columns because it depends on, is this an expense, liability? You know what I mean? It just kind of depends on what kind of control it is. But kind of a nice, simple report. There's another way to run that same report. People often forget about this, is this way, and by posting group. Posting group is probably not as important, but it kind of helps to look at the liability side. What liability accounts are going to be hit? Probably not as interesting to districts as much, but again, it's because it only talks about what they consider to be the function. So it's only speaking to the function, but that's fine. It's a little confusing because we have some earnings accounts that show this, which really isn't used. It uses the allocation. So it's kind of confusing. This one's a little bit more confusing. Kind of like it less. Kind of bottom line. Bank payment discrepancies. Let's see what that does. I don't remember what it does. Bank payment discrepancies. Oh, that's right. Barbara Adams. That's right. So it looks for things that it thinks might be odd. No non-block, non-pre-note remainder employee pay distribution record found. Pre-note false. So let's take a look at Barbara. BA 2181. Was it 2181?
Yep.
Yeah, there it goes. Navigate, card, pay distribution. Yeah, now, it's not great. I don't like that. We talked about before. To me, that should be, percent of that pay should be 0 and the remainder flag should be checked. So it's kind of telling you that just doesn't, we don't like that kind of record. Not a good record. We don't like that record. Na boo-boo. It's going to work for this time. I know it'll work, so I'm not going to worry about it, but I am going to write a note to fix it next time. That's kind of what I'm thinking. The reason I can't do it now is if I click on this and make any change, it's going to tell me that I can't because I'm in the journal right now with this person. So it's kind of smart enough to not let me do that. The only way you could probably do it would be to go back to the journal. You would probably then need to void this person's check. I mean, it's just a mess. You almost would want to void everything because everything's kind of like complete set. That ACH file is a complete set, everything's complete set. So if you're really doing stuff like that and you really wanted to fix it, like obsessive compulsive disorder or something, then I would advise that you wind everything back and deal with it the way we've discussed previously. I just don't think you can kind of do it in a kind of targeted way. So anyway, I'm not going to worry about that because I think it's good enough. Back to actions. So we did that. Reports. Check for negative net pay. That's a good thing to do. Oh, shoot. We got a Walter Whitman. 0475. Okay, so looking at his net pay, nothing happened. And actually, he got a remittance advice. So the question is, what happened? I think what happened is we have no dollars. So we had no dollars, therefore he got no net pay. Interesting. Yeah. So in this case, I don't know what the heck happened. I don't know if he's in the ACH file. I could try to void him, just to delete him. Let's see what happens. It'll be kind of curious. So I will kind of go ahead and say, let's just void this one guy. Will it let me do it? Oh, no, I don't want that. I want to void the check. Yeah, void single check. Yeah, see, the problem is you can't void a direct deposit on a onesie twosies basis. You'd have to roll the entire set back, which is not a big deal. Let me just do that. Let me just go ahead and just do this. I'll go ahead and void the direct deposit. I'll pick back payroll. Void. Okay. Sure we want to do that. Okay, it's pretty harmless. It's doing it right now. I can tell it's doing it because I can't click on anything. It's giving me an hourglass. So in a second, it's going to come back. The screen will just come back. I don't think it'll even give me a message. I think it will just come live again. There it does. Came live. So now I could actually void his check. And I could go ahead and just delete that data. Because he shouldn't even be in here at this point. And remove the filter. Okay. So at this point, I guess I want to show you something. I'm going to go to the file manager now and show you my C drive, just so you understand what's happening in the computer while this is going on. So this is not my file. I don't know what that file is. That's October, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that file. Pretend it doesn't exist. Okay, my file doesn't exist. And that's right, because what happens is it created it here, and then when I voided it, it just removed it. Okay? And that's fine, but we'll come back to that in a second. Let me just kind of go back here now. So I'm going to go back and export again. And yes, I get that report again. I just can't get away from it. In other words, you can't not get the report and get it to create the file, if that makes any sense. It just has to go, because basically the process of doing the report is the process that's generating the data with. It's exactly the same processes. So you can't get out of it. So we'll go back to the export. I'll show you the C drive. We could probably watch the C drive here. Yeah, so there's the file coming in. The file is done. You can see I can close that. And I can actually open this up, actually. It's just a text file. There it is. There's your ACH file. All right, so that's fine. So when I do the transmit, what it's going to do really ultimately is mark these records as transmitted and move that file to the transmitted folder. That's in essence what it's doing. So if we ever have to unwind it behind the scenes, we can run some SQL scripts to kind of fix the data, but then we still need to get that file kind of moved back up to that one folder higher before we can actually click the void. I'm doing this from here, but really the void is, well, the void's not there. Yeah, the void's not there. All right, so now we'll do the transmit. Payroll, transmit, okay. It'll say, are you sure you really want to do it? You say, yes, I really am. And then this is coming from your computer because it's trying to run Notepad to bring it up. Because that's what the program we run. We run Notepad. We bring it up. You go, yeah, looks good to me. Yeah, I can accept that. Okay. Did the transmission work properly? If you say no, it doesn't mark it. If you say yes, then it may kind of hesitate a little bit because it's marking all the records. So we'll let it do its thing. And it's marking all the records. At this point, as I said before, a few times now, you only have one thing you can do, which is to move forward. By the way, I don't think I got through all the reports because we found that one person, that guy distracted me. That was that 0 guy. So we did this guy, this guy. That's not important. It's not appropriate. Missing employees. So you can actually say, tell me who's not in the journal, or tell me people are not in the journal, but they were in the previous cycle. So there are 2 modes you can run. And sometimes that can be useful to say, give me all non-block people that were not in the journal and segregate it for me. So again, this is the kind of thing where people can look through and go, okay, yeah, all right, reasonable, yeah. Very reasonable that people might not have gotten paid, not a problem, but that's just kind of a nice double check. Again, it's all about double checking. Pay by job number, I'm not sure what that does, but I haven't seen this report in a long time. But we can see the payroll by job. Yeah, so it kind of gives it to you by job. Kind of cool. And at the very end, it gives me something. Oh, it gives me some subtotals too. Yeah, so that can be very interesting. Yeah, I definitely would show them that. They may like that a lot. Pay control differences is typically done against, like retirement and medical. And what it's designed to do is to say, something doesn't look right. I mean, it went up 30%. And not much change otherwise. So it's kind of smart enough to kind of look and just say, something just doesn't smell right. between whatever. I think you have to run it for one control. You typically run it for one control at a time. So we say run it for, let's say, MCAREEE. But I think you have to know the posting dates. That's my problem. I don't know. It's 10/15. I'll go 09/16 to 09/30. Trying to pick up some time in last time. I don't know if we have any data there. Is my problem. It's 198 records. Yeah, I think I might have picked up. I don't know what I picked up. Yeah, maybe that's reasonable. I mean, 4 cents, really? You got to tell me about 4 cents? Anyway, you get the idea. Not to worry about it. All right, so we'll go back to home. The next step is to post. So let's talk about the posting routine, and we'll conclude with that. Okay, the posting routine is a little complicated. It's complicated kind of on purpose. It has a lot of fault tolerance built into it. It was rebuilt a couple years ago. The reason it was rebuilt is we were getting a lot of locking of tables that were affecting the purchasing side of the business while this entire payroll processing posting was going on. And for some large districts, it was taking 2 hours, and that's not tolerable to sort of lock tables for 2 hours while people can't invoice a payable or something. So that became a real problem. So we redesigned it, and so we do it in 2 stages now: phase 1, phase 2. The phase 1 is payroll related. It just writes out all the payroll data, including what it thinks it's going to go to the general ledger with. Then at the very end, it goes to phase 2, which it takes that and posts that usually in summary. I will take a quick journey over to your payroll journal templates now. We kind of talked about it, but I'll bring it. Here it is. Fully summarized to your general ledger. So that's important. There's your test report ID, which is no big deal. No big deal. But there's the check. Remember I was telling you about the check? That's where you indicate the check right there. So it's fully summarized, and that's good. So it's going to go to the general ledger fully summarized. So again, in the post process, it's going to write all the data out for the payroll. I could run it just like that. I could do that. I could do this. Basically what that does is it writes it all out to the payroll tables, and if it hits any error, gives you the error message and rolls back. If you don't click this, what happens is as many employees as it can do, it will do. Okay? And then if it doesn't process them all, then we can come back and rerun it one more time with the stop if errors on. So, I mean, you can run like this, and if everything is beautiful, life is good, let's say 100% of the people get through phase 1, then it will do phase 2. And generally speaking, there's very few reasons why that would fail, but it's theoretically, and they don't clear the badge. So this is the way that it would just completely clear itself out. I could filter for one employee or some employees, but I'm going to go ahead and just let it run all the way through the first time and see what happens. So we'll just see what it does. So the good news is that generally speaking, if it gets through phase 1, it will commit the data, which means that it still then only has to deal with, maybe 2 people that it had problems with. Boy, it's taking a long time though. And by the way, all the time is in phase 1. And we're not locking any of the financial side of the business, which is very important because you're going to get them screaming at you. Yeah, it's slow though. And the reason it's slow is it's kind of slow for the same reason that the AirCheck Online, when I checked that checkbox, was slow. Same reason that the generate distributions took a while. It's doing all that substitute math again for that account strings. All those allocations and this, that, and the other. So, so Brendan, do you have specific questions or thoughts while we're sitting here? Because we're going to be sitting here for a while that you want to talk about. What's our next game plan? Because we haven't still gotten into any of the more complex, both tasks and setup of the system.
Okay.
And I'm going to look at my calendar now.
Okay.
Do the same. Presentation training, no, that's spam. I don't need that. Let me just try to get rid of some emails real quick. Jeremy emailing me again. How about this? Ishu Chandra. I don't think so. Anyway, I don't have to worry about that one. Oops, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do my calendar. All righty. I'd rather not do tomorrow, and I am here next week, pretty decently open. I think here's what I think we need to do. We have periodic activities, and we have also the setup of the system, which is probably the more complex part, particularly the design of the payroll controls. So I would say let's set up two more sessions if that makes sense to you.
Okay.
You have particular days as I'm looking at this?
It doesn't really matter.
Bill?
I'm open. I've just got my usual development team meetings in the mornings, just like you do. So
Yeah, no, I know.
I think, I don't know, is our existing schedule of what we've been doing been working okay for us?
Yeah, I think it's been really good. I like the 2 to 4 slot because, try to get some morning activities done, get my brain a little bit on the right. Yeah, so how about if we pick Monday and Wednesday? Is that okay? 2 to 4.
Okay.
And I'll call those sessions, I guess we kind of skipped a session really, so this is really going to be sessions, because today is really what? Well, I guess we kind of did a session last time, we just got cut off, so.
Today was session 4.
This is session 4?
Yes.
It'll be 5 and 6 then. Okay, good. All right, sounds good. Let's see how we're doing over here. Oh, man, might as well. So in those sessions, again, there's still a decent amount of depth, and I can't remember everything we've trained you on, but I don't think we got into constructions of payroll controls and complex method steps and all those correct activities where you can mass updates data. We don't know how to roll jobs each year. So again, it's a big system, deep and wide, and so there's still plenty more to learn. And the good news is we're recording all this, so anybody can come back and play this in sequence, I guess, Bill, and that should help as well. But right now, whoever's listening to this, we are stalling because we are posting a pretty darn big batch, probably about 2,000 entries. I don't even know how many. And we're 31% done on phase 1. But once we get through that, the rest of it will just post very fast. One thing I will tell you, though, is there's 2 Boolean fields that might be hidden, but you can show. And what they basically will say is process through phase 1, process through phase 2. And so it's interesting to see that because if you start getting some posted through and some not, sometimes you want to set a filter and say, well, tell me which ones have not gotten through phase 1. Just so you know, the way it's designed, it will not start on phase 2 until 100% of the people in the batch have gotten through phase 1. So you could, as an example, for employee XYZ and say do phase 1, phase 2, and clean up the batch. It won't do that. What it'll really end up doing is it'll just process them through phase 1, and then it will hold. And it will never process phase 2 or phase 3 on a selective basis. So even though we give you a range of employees that you theoretically could enter, it really is only kind of affecting phase 1. We learned kind of through a lot of pain that it does not work to go ahead and try to post the general ledger multiple times from the same batch. The system tries to put that in multiple registers, and then from an audit perspective, it confuses everybody. They want to see that entire process under one register. And our problem was that we wanted to have the ability to sort of problem solve, and get, let's say, 90% of it out of the way, and then focus on these last few people that are causing our problems. So, and the problems are all in phase 1. So I think that worked out, fine in the long run. So we're halfway there, so I might as well send you the appointments. Might as well work on it. Let me just go calendar today. So these are the people should I invite all the same people, Bill? Anybody else on our side? I got James, George, Chris, and Christina on our side. I got
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Okay. Monday. Request. All right, so this is payroll training session 5, and I don't know what we want to focus on. So I don't want to advertise. I may change my mind is the problem. So I'm being a little vague, I know. All right, let's see again. So that's our Monday class. Session will be 6, right? All right, it's there. Yeah, so Brenda, if you click that checkbox, stop if errors, the downside of that is that if it stops with errors, it rolls back everybody. So if you
Oh,
click on that and it goes through, 500 people, and you get on the 501st person, you get some kind of weird error. And what that means is the error does bubble up to the screen beautifully. And that's great. It helps you to problem solve. But then the downside is when you hit OK and close that error, nothing's happened. So that's what I mean by those check boxes. You know what I'm saying? So the
hmm
goal of this is to try to get, all the people processed as you can, problem solve just a few, and yet have the system when it does focus on the few, just be able to focus on the few, right? And not have to keep going back and reprocessing the bulk of them over and over and over again. I found that people were kind of still complaining about how long it was taking. And come to find out, they were always clicking that checkbox because they said, I want to see the error. I said, well, that's not the design. The design is to let it run one time at least with that not checked and let it finish, complete, and mark all the people that it successfully does. And then you're now efficient, you see, from that point on. So that's why the very first time it's really important not to click that checkbox. And that message has not gotten through clear enough, I know. And so I think people are spending more time in the posting routine than it was designed to do. And that's a shame, because I was trying to make their lives, I was trying to solve the concurrency problem and make their lives more efficient, right? That was the goal. And if they don't take advantage of it, though, what can I do about it? So let me get myself ordered. We got to take our dog in. We have an not old, well, we don't know how old she is to rescue. I think she's got a urinary tract infection. What I suspect. We'll see. $79%. So, Bill, all the implementers are still there?
Oh yeah, they've been in the conference room all day.
Oh my God, they must be tired. All right, we're getting there. 16%. I've got a 4:30 call, so all this is kind of being timed now. It's just my brother. I can blow him off. My other brother's going to want to be watching that UVA basketball game tonight. That's all he got to do.
That Georgia Tech.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to kill him, though, right? Audrey has an appointment to vet at 6 p.m. today. I know she does. My wife is reminding me. 90%.
And she only does that because she's learned over the years that's what she needs to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine
Right.
too.
Yep. Otherwise, it won't get done. She sent me an invite. It's like reminding me, you know what I mean?
I say you don't blow her off, just like you're going to blow off Jeremy.
What is this? Oh, huh. Yeah, we got Hampton City Schools, is starting to call references.
Oh yeah, cool.
It's always a good sign, right?
Oh yeah.
I just have to, he wants me to call Cheryl Rabanich at the Central Bucks and pump her. Okay, so you see phase two is going through. Now, it wouldn't have started phase two. It would have come back and said X of Y. In other words, it would have said, well, 512 and 516 were successfully put through phase one, and basically telling you got to resolve that before it does this. So now it's going to go through the third phase, which is to clear the batch, I believe. Yeah, it's going to. Oh, I know what it's doing. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a screen issue here that I probably should improve. It's kind of hard to improve, but basically that second phase is me building the buffer table, and then the buffer table posts to the general ledger. And it ends up being more of a complex journal entry than I thought. I didn't think it would really require any screen I/O, but it kind of does. You see how we're waiting here? I should have one more dialogue pop up so you know something's happening. Yeah, that's probably when I test posting a batch of people. The process is so quick. Yeah, that's something that we probably should resolve, Bill. It's just kind of annoying, unless it's behind the screen. No, I don't think it is. Oh, no, it is. God, it's taking a long time, though. Holy cow. Is that real? Trying to do my little tab, dude. All right, there we go. Yeah, I hate when those things pop behind. I thought Microsoft would solve that sooner or later, but I don't know if it's really their problem. Not sure what caused it. Well, it's probably all their problem. They own everything. They own the operating systems. They own the accounting system. They own it all. All right, so we look good. I guess, Brenda, one of the things that I want you to put on your note to remind me to talk to you about is liabilities to AP.
Okay.
Remind me next time we want to go back to these OH Perkins and our test, and we want to pick back up on liabilities to AP. That's a very, very important next step that you do after this posting. But I'm out of time now, and it takes more than 7 minutes to kind of explain all of it and analyze it.
Okay.
And so let's make sure we pick back up with there, and then we'll continue on with, I think, more tasks, periodic activities. I think we'll cover that in depth. And then I think we'll leave to the end the most complex part, which is building the controls in the first place, these payroll controls.
Okay.
So when I hit OK, the screen should be blank, and you go back to the menu and you congratulate yourself. Very nice.
All done.
Bravo. And next time we'll pick back up on tasks, and we will start right with this one right here, liabilities to AP.
Okay.
So very good. Well, thank you guys.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll pick back